Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the vibrant, completely unhinged world of dimensional double shift. Now, if you've been following virtual reality over the last decade, you absolutely know Owlchemy Labs. I mean, they're the pioneering studio that practically invented VR comfort and approachability with mega hits like Job Simulator and Vacation Simulator. But here's the thing. Their newest title, it is without a doubt their most ambitious experiment yet. They've essentially thrown the entire rulebook out the window to create this frantic, controller-free, multiplayer environment, and we're going to break down exactly how it works and what it really means for the VR industry as a whole.
Think of our agenda today as your official employee onboarding checklist for Owlchemy Corp. Number 1, the Owlchemy legacy. 2, shifting to Sporelando. 3, hand-tracked co-op chaos. And 4, who is playing this?
Section 1, the alchemical legacy.
Okay, let's dive into this. For years, Owlchemy's formula was incredibly consistent and, honestly, highly lucrative. Games like Job Simulator were strictly single-player, they relied heavily on traditional motion controllers, and they carried a premium $30 price tag up front. And hey, it worked. That approach resulted in over 1 million units sold and $30 million in revenue for the Vacation Simulator sequel. But Dimensional Double Shift, it flips literally every single one of those metrics on its head. It is a free-to-play, 4-player online co-op game that completely removes physical controllers from the equation. It relies exclusively on hand tracking. It's just a massive, massive shift from that isolated premium comfort we're used to, moving toward chaotic, free social interaction. It's a huge gamble that could genuinely redefine how we play in VR.
Section 2, shifting to Sporelando.
So what exactly are you doing when you actually clock in? Well, you're running an interdimensional service station called the Gas and Grill, with up to 3 of your friends. The game operates on this clever hub-and-spoke model across what they call the Omniverse, and it's all managed by an AI hologram named Alice who just endlessly spouts these ridiculous corporate motivational buzzwords. You start off in the free-based dimension of Triatl, which is this rainy, coffee-obsessed Seattle parody, and from there the game expands through $5 DLC dimension packs. So we've got Hexatexas, a fiery Texas parody with demonic patrons and monster trucks. There's New Jersey, featuring full-on boardwalk themes. And now, the brand new Sporelando pack. Oh, and here's a brilliantly consumer-friendly move by Owlchemy. Only one person in your 4-player group actually needs to own the DLC for everyone to travel there.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact brand of humor we're dealing with here. Andrew Ike, who is the COO, and yes, that is literally his real job title at Owlchemy Labs, explained the creative spark behind the Sporelando DLC with this quote: "What if Florida Man was actually a sentient mushroom? You know, it just perfectly sets the tone for a dimension that is humid, totally chaotic, and just wonderfully absurd."
So once you're in Sporelando, your team's jobs get this heavy, heavy coat of Central Florida satire. You're servicing Sporidians, which are these sentient fungi who live in a messy suburban swamp like 3 highway exits past the theme parks. And the tasks? They reflect this perfectly. Over in the repair bay, you are fixing these bizarre biomechanical golf carts driven by cantankerous mushroom golfers. Meanwhile, over in the diner, you're serving up swamp delicacies and you're roasting hot dogs and marshmallows over an actual campfire. Sounds fun, right? But doing all of this is actually far from simple. Because unlike a lot of VR games where co-op really just means 4 people playing solo while standing next to each other, Dimensional Double Shift makes teamwork mathematically mandatory. Let me give you a really specific example from the source material. When a broken-down golf cart rolls into the bay, players quickly realize they literally cannot lift the hood alone. It requires multiple players grabbing it simultaneously. The puzzles feature coordinate maps where one player controls the horizontal slider and someone else has to control the vertical. Over in the diner, appliances like the char grill and the meat grinder have to be shared, and ingredients have to be tossed across stations. Need a water sprayer? You gotta ask your teammate to reach across their station and spray your side of the engine for you. Because of all this, crystal clear voice chat and stable server sessions are absolutely vital. Seriously, if your comms drop, the entire diner falls apart. If you don't communicate, you fail. Period.
Section 3, hand-tracked co-op chaos.
Now, coordinating all of this madness without holding physical controllers introduces a whole new layer of complexity, right? Especially when you're playing a 4-player, controller-free game natively on Quest 3's standalone hardware. So the crucial point to understand here is the physics synchronization dilemma. In a normal single-player game, your headset handles all the physics. But in multiplayer, when you pick up an item, your headset basically takes authority over it, so if you try to hand that item directly to a friend, the game's network architecture has to instantly transfer that authority to their headset mid-motion without the object glitching out or just randomly rocketing across the room. Pulling this off seamlessly on standalone Quest hardware without crashing the session stability is just a massive technical feat. The developers actually had to throw out their old multiplayer code entirely and build a custom network architecture from scratch just to allow players to naturally hand a wrench to each other over the internet.
But of course, because there's no haptic feedback, meaning you can't actually feel the physical wrench in your hand, players still experience this inevitable friction known as handoff jitter. Direct handoffs can definitely be hit or miss. So, what happens? Well, players just naturally adapt. Instead of risking the item flying across the room because of a physics glitch, players quickly learn to use the diner counters and tool benches as physical buffers. They just set the item down, and their friend picks it right up.
This whole dynamic was captured perfectly by a reviewer at OVRview, who pointed out the weird psychological tension of hand tracking. Your brain says, hey, I am using my hands, so I should be able to just hand this to him or her. And when the tech doesn't perfectly match that natural, everyday expectation, it can kind of feel like the system is holding you back. Hand tracking is incredible, for sure, but it requires deliberate, measured movements. If you move faster than those camera sensors can track your fingers, you're gonna get dropped inputs.
But to their credit, Owlchemy is constantly updating the software to improve accessibility and smooth things out. A really massive win here is the recently added thumb swipe feature. Basically, by simply closing your hand loosely and pinching your thumb and index finger, you can artificially rotate your view in the game. This means you can play totally seated, facing forward, which completely eliminates the need to physically spin around and accidentally roundhouse kick your living room furniture. It's just a brilliant, elegant solution to a very common spatial computing problem.
Section 4. Who is playing this?
So, who exactly is actually playing this highly social, freemium, forced co-op game? Well, the numbers are pretty striking. Since its open beta, the game has already surpassed 500,000 downloads. That actually makes it the fastest-growing title in Owlchemy's history. Players have logged 1.3 million game hours, completed over 7 million diner orders, and playfully bopped Alice, the AI manager, on the head about 15.4 million times. A massive, massive driver for this rapid growth was the launch of the budget-friendly Meta Quest 3S, which essentially brought this huge flood of younger users onto the platform who were all actively looking for free social experiences.
However, not everyone out there agrees this is a guaranteed golden ticket for the industry. A really fascinating debate popped up in the community, perfectly highlighted by a Reddit user named Octogod. They argued that for a smaller indie developer, 500,000 downloads on a strictly free game is actually a pretty worrying metric. They pointed out that if only, say, 1 to 3% of those users actually buy the $5 microtransactions, it barely generates enough revenue to cover a single developer's salary, let alone keep the lights on for a whole studio. Their core argument is that VR just isn't mobile gaming yet. The user base isn't large enough to rely purely on those tiny freemium conversion rates. Now, Owlchemy is owned by Google, so they have the backing to afford this kind of wild experiment, but it's definitely a stark warning for smaller studios trying to blindly chase the free-to-play trend.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that we are actively watching a shift between two very different eras of VR economics. The premium era was largely defined by older users who were totally willing to drop $30 up front for a polished, contained, single-player experience like Vacation Simulator. But right now, we are actively shifting into the freemium era. Driven heavily by these younger Quest 3S users, the focus is now squarely on social hangouts, free entry barriers, and earning revenue later through smaller cosmetic purchases and those $5 DLC packs.
And you know, this transition hasn't been entirely seamless for the player base, which really sparks the question, is this meant to be a family-friendly game, a competitive party game, or just some weird social hangout space? If you look at the user reviews, there are definitely some clear friction points. A lot of veteran players are practically demanding full single-player and endless modes. And while Owlchemy did toss in a solo practice mode, the core game remains strictly, unyieldingly cooperative. Some players express sheer frustration over this forced multiplayer, noting that waiting around in matchmaking lobbies just to find a cohesive group can be really tedious. Furthermore, there's a surprisingly strong desire from some folks to just grab their traditional controllers when the hand tracking gets a little too messy. Yet, despite the occasional grab jank or those matchmaking waits, the game succeeds wildly at its primary goal. As OVRview concluded after playing the new Sporelando expansion, it felt less like a game and more like four friends just hanging out in VR. And honestly, that hits the nail on the head. When you're standing around a virtual swamp campfire, literally roasting marshmallows and just laughing at your team's disastrous attempt to fix a golf cart, the actual technology just kind of fades into the background. It becomes a genuine, memorable social space.
Dimensional double shift proves that while hand tracking tech and freemium economics are absolutely still evolving, The pure magic of shared virtual presence is undeniable. Owlchemy Labs continues to push the boundaries of how we connect and interact in digital spaces. So I want to leave you with this question to ponder. As the whole industry shifts from these premium solo experiences over to free social hangouts, which VR studio do you think best understands what makes VR actually fun? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And hey, thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.